Welcome back to Tipping Point. I'm your host, Kara McKinney. About 1 in 5 mail-in ballot voters admit to some kind of potential voting fraud. That is the explosive takeaway from a recent survey conducted by Rasmussen Survey and the Heartland Institute. Of course, the question posed to respondents was not, did you cheat in the 2020 election? But instead, questions were phrased blandly about how people voted in that election, without indicating whether or not the action was legal or not legal. This write-up from The Federalist by New York Times bestselling author Justin Haskins, who helped to write the survey questions as the director of the Socialism Research Center at the Heartland Institute, has this to say about the results. He explains, quote, for example, one question asked during the 2020 election, did you cast a mail-in ballot in a state where you were no longer a permanent resident? Such an action nearly always constitutes fraud. Incredibly, 17% of voters said yes. Another question asked if a friend or family member filled out a respondent's ballot in part or in full on behalf of the respondent, which is illegal in some states. 19% of mail-in voters who responded to the survey answered yes. Even more remarkably, 21% of respondents admitted to filling out a ballot for someone they know, such as a spouse or child, and 17% confessed to signing a ballot or ballot envelope on behalf of a friend or family member with or without his or her permission. Both potential forms of illegal voting, end quote. As if that isn't bad enough already, Haskins has more bombshells up his sleeve. He says, quote, as troubling as these findings are, however, additional questions in the Heartland Institute/Rasmussen survey suggest voter fraud and illegal voting may have been even worse than the 1 in 5 figure suggests. For instance, 8% of all respondents, not just those who voted by mail, said they were offered pay or a reward in return for voting. Equally disturbing, 10% of voters said a friend, family member, co-worker, or other acquaintance admitted to them that he or she cast a mail-in ballot in 2020 in a state other than his or her state of permanent residence. 11% said that a friend, family member, co-worker, or other acquaintance admitted to filling out someone else's ballot, end quote. Joining us now to discuss is military defense attorney Davis Yance. Davis, thanks for being here tonight.
Good evening.
So that's a lot to take in, but what did those stunning results tell you?
It tells me two things. Any nation that is not serious about election security will continue to allow mass mail-in balloting and won't take submitting some form of identification to vote seriously. That's the bottom line. If we are going to be a nation that allows mail-in voting, it's not a question of whether or not there will be fraud. It's just a question of how much fraud will occur and what impact they'll have on an election. No other Western modernized nation allows for mail-in voting. They just don't do it because it is so rife with fraud. And you have some states that are even mass mailing out ballots without even them being requested by voters. So that's the bottom line. These are criminal acts. They influence critical decisions that we make in a nation, and they really do impact our social construct. Everything about our nation only works if we have free, fair, and honest elections. And if we don't, society begins to break down and we lose faith in the process.
And you're spot on with that. I know the article, it also goes on to say, and I have part of the quote here, they say, if the recent Heartland Institute/Rasmussen survey is accurate and 1 in 5 ballots were in fact fraudulent, that would suggest greater than 13 million ballots should not have been counted nationwide in 2020. That's far more than the margin of victory, and I'll put that in air quotes, for Biden in the popular vote, about 7 million. So does that kind of show why for the last 4 years that whenever we talk about election fraud or election integrity, that the left can't help itself against taking pot shots at us constantly? And I wish it just ended at the pot shots, right? The nasty terms, election denier, authoritarian, election, accusing us of trying to steal or overturn an election, all that. But not only that, but of course going after the January 6th defendants, not just those who alleged to have committed crimes, but just anyone who was there that day within, breathing distance, eyeball distance of the Capitol, going after them. Is it because they know what we know, they just don't want us talking about it?